for further assistance. From one mishap to another, a passenger plane slid off the end of the runway at Mactan Cebu International Airport today. Philippine Airlines confirmed the incident in a statement, saying the pilot of flight PR2369 was attempting to land when the aircraft's wheels veered off into the grassy area. All 29 passengers and 4 crew members were safe and accounted for. The plane left Caticlan and landed in Mactan during bad weather at 11:39 a.m. As of 2 p.m., airport maintenance is still retrieving the aircraft, delaying over 30 flights. The country is inching closer to yet another grim milestone. Almost 50,000 people have died because of COVID-19, nearly 2 years into the pandemic. The Health Department reported an additional 25 fatalities today, bringing the total count to 49,961. Today's figure is way below yesterday's tally of 176, which included 8 that occurred this month and 162 that happened from March to November. The remaining deaths were traced as far back as September, October, and November last year. The DOH explains the daily deaths reported are sometimes high because of backlogs and validation at the local government level. Officials say a person's cause and date of death should be verified at the local level before it is included in the death toll.
Marami po kasing nasasumita sa atin na mga deaths, pero pag verify po natin, hindi po COVID-19 ang talagang cause of death nila. It was just incidental. For example, namatay sa vehicular accident.
The agency adds many local governments are having difficulty validating the deaths, especially when cases peaked in August and September. But so far, it says the overall COVID-19 situation is further improving, with fewer people getting infected on a daily basis. Today, there are over 370 new infections and more than 600 recoveries. The DOH is monitoring the situation in Eastern Samar, Western Samar, and Zamboanga Sibugay, which are showing a slight increase in cases this past week. The government is studying the possibility of advancing the schedule of the booster dose. Health Secretary Francisco Duque tells CNN Philippines this may help boost protection against COVID-19 amid the threat of the new Omicron variant. Vaccine experts panel member Dr. Ronjin Solante earlier said some studies showed booster shots given within 3 to 4 months had good results. Currently, boosters are given at least 6 months following the second dose of Pfizer, Moderna, Sinovac, AstraZeneca, and Sputnik V. Those who got the single-shot Janssen vaccine may get their additional dose after 3 months.
So maybe 3 months after, if the response is truly much higher in terms of antibody levels. So we're going to defer to our vaccine expert panel on this. No? Dr. Nina Gloriani, in particular, has been really monitoring the situation very, very closely, no? Because she wants to know and to guide the IATF in terms of policy decisions.
The government began providing booster shots on December 3rd. 5 of the 7 initially reported missing Filipinos who returned from Omicron-hit South Africa have already been found. 2 are still admitted at the Bureau of Quarantine facility. 2 are on home quarantine, and another is completing the mandatory 14-day isolation. 3 of them have already tested negative in the RT-PCR tests, while 2 more are still waiting for their results. Health and quarantine officers are still looking for 2 passengers who are from northern Mindanao and Mimaropa.
2 other individuals na hindi pa rin po natin nakikita, we had been coordinating with the specific local governments, no, para po makita na natin sila, makausap natin, matrace kung ano na po ang estado nila sa ngayon. So sa ngayon, wala pa ho tayo nakikitang rason para ipag-alam sa public yung kanilang mga pangalan, because we still would want to preserve the rights of these individuals.
South Africa is where the Omicron coronavirus variant was first discovered. The Interagency Task Force adds Portugal, to the red list nations or those considered as high risk for COVID-19. This means flights from the European nation are barred beginning midnight of December 12. But pending the ban, travelers from Portugal must undergo 14-day home quarantine and RT-PCR test on the 7th day of isolation. There are now 16 countries and territories under the travel ban. On this day 73 years ago, the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a milestone document that establishes the equal dignity and worth of every person. As the world observes International Human Rights Day, human rights defenders gathered to protest against a law supposedly threatening civil liberties in the country. George Cahilas reports petitioners will not stop fighting the anti-terrorism law in the courts.
This Human Rights Day, hundreds of protesters trooped to UP Diliman to express discontent with the decision of the Supreme Court on the anti-terrorism law. The High Court declared almost the entire law constitutional, except for two portions that are said to be overboard and violative of freedom of expression. Lawyer Evelyn Ursua, who represented artists and journalist petitioners, said the decision of the High Tribunal is not a victory for human rights.
Scary and depressing. Scary, the future is scary. Depressing dahil inaasahan namin ang Supreme Court to protect us, to protect human rights, to protect constitutional rights, to protect people, no? At hindi yun yung nakuha namin.
While the Supreme Court has yet to release its full decision, some petitioners have already expressed intent to file a motion for reconsideration. Petitioner attorney Nery Colmenares says they will still push to declare several provisions of the law unconstitutional. Warrantless arrest or detention for 24 days or more without a case against a suspected terrorist, and the broad power of the Anti-Terrorism Council to freeze assets and designate a person or a group as terrorist, among others.
Klarong-klaro na unconstitutional ang Section 29 eh. Di ba? 24 days na pagkakulong. Wala ka man lang kaso sa korte. Eh ba't kanila kinulong? Wala pala silang batayan eh. Di ba violation yan ng due process rights mo?
The petitioners cite the case of two Aitas who were charged with terrorism as an example. After almost a year in detention, the accused were found innocent by the court.
Wala namang masyadong effect yung dalawang provisions na na-strike down as unconstitutional. Negated naman yon ng the rest of the provisions.
Petitioners also raised concern about the record of the Duterte administration when it comes to red tagging. Activists, universities, even celebrities.
Anybody can tag anyone as a terrorist, and anybody can bring him to prison 24 days, tagging him as a terrorist without a crime. I guess yan ang what we are trying to avoid.
The Anti-Terrorism Council has already designated the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines as terrorist organizations. George Cahilas, CNN Philippines.
Coming up on Newsnight, Meralco is raising power rates this month. Find out how much more you have to shell out. And another major shopping event approaches. What do you need to keep in mind when buying goods online? Some tips after the break.
Love is all about time. Di minamadali ang pagpapasarap. Like the love in every Pure Foods ready to eat. Slow cooked and ready in 8 minutes. Para may time ka sa mga mahal mo.
Importance of boosters. New studies out of Israel show a third shot of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine resulted in 10 times fewer infections and reduced deaths by more than 90%. As things stand now, just about a quarter of vaccinated Americans are boosted.
What we do know now is that the third dose appears to provide very strong additional antibody response, including against Omicron.
And Pfizer's CEO is already talking about looking at the possibility of a fourth shot down the road.
I think we will need the fourth dose.
I'm glad that they are developing this fourth booster, if you will, but I think it's far too soon for us to say whether it's something that's going to be needed.
Access to boosters now expanding to people as young as 16 in the U.S., even as new studies show there's a long way to go in convincing parents to get even a first shot for their kids. With some citing safety concerns and a lack of information, about 3 in 10 parents now say they will definitely not vaccinate their children, according to a new Kaiser Family Foundation survey.
Right now, we are still losing more than 1,000 people a day, 1,000 people a day dying from COVID, and it's not from Omicron, it's from the Delta variant. And it's important that people get vaccinated.
Across the country, COVID cases are surging again, hitting the unvaccinated the hardest. Delta is ravaging the Northeast, and more than half of all new hospitalizations in the past month have come from the Midwest, especially Michigan and Ohio, which together account for 1/4 of those hospitalizations.
There is really no more room for at this point, and we're doing everything possible to increase that capacity.
Maine now reaching its own record high hospitalizations and calling up its National Guard to help alleviate the strain on its healthcare system. New York also activating its National Guard amid mounting worry about the weeks ahead.
We expect to see other areas of the country also light up in the next several weeks.
Love to do.
Steven Spielberg is ready to tell his own story, or at least a version of it. The Fabelmans, loosely based on his own childhood, is set to reach theaters next Thanksgiving. Spielberg wrote the script with his West Side Story screenwriter Tony Kushner. Michelle Williams is set to star as a character based on Spielberg's mother. Olivia Rodrigo is heading out on tour. The teen chart topper has announced her Sour Tour will kick off in San Francisco next April and wrap up in London in July. Rodrigo is up for 7 trophies at next month's Grammy Awards, including all top 4 categories: Album, Record, and Song of the Year, and Best New Artist.
You're not as hard to read as you think. You run a racket, same as me. If you help me, we can make quite a big dent in this town.
You barely know me.
Oh, I know you're no good, and I know that goes. Neither am I.
Here's a look at the latest trailer for Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley. Bradley Cooper and Cate Blanchett lead the all-star cast of the 1940s thriller. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. This just in, the Civil Aviation Authority says the Mactan Cebu International Airport has reopened its runway, where a passenger plane earlier slid off. Philippine Airlines confirmed the pilot of flight PR-2369 was attempting to land when the aircraft's wheels veered off into the grassy area. All 29 passengers and 4 crew members were safe and accounted for. Sulu officials initiate a project to strengthen maritime security in the province. In a statement, the Joint Task Force Sulu says the governor and mayors of the province met on December 1st to develop the Bantay Dagat project, involving municipal and barangay officials. Local chief executives will be in charge of recruiting fishermen or seafarer volunteers who would conduct maritime patrols with the military to improve border control against terrorists and other lawless elements. The statement comes after South China Morning Post reported that local officials in Sulu had a secret meeting to recruit 60 men and, quote, invade Sabah, which Malaysian authorities denied. Malaysia has considered Sabah as its territory since 1963. after it joined the Malaysian Federation. But the Philippine government says Sabah was only on lease to Malaysia by the Sultanate of Sulu, which ceded sovereignty over the area to the country. One presidential aspirant unveils her 5-point labor agenda for 2022, while another says he will put Filipinos first in employment. Meanwhile, one hopeful says he will not actively seek out endorsements the way another aspirant is doing. Our Anjo Alimario has the details.
To realize her labor agenda, presidential aspirant Leni Robredo wants first things first, restore trust in government.
Bubuogin natin ang mga sindikatong ginawa ng negosyo ang gobyerno. Gagawin nating patas ang merkado at sisiguruhin may isang salita ang pamahalaan.
The Vice President says she'll focus on 4 sectors: maritime, climate, technology, and manufacturing. Protecting workers against discrimination is something close to her heart.
Yung sektor na manggagawa ay isa sa mga sektor na kailangan tutukan kasi sila talaga yung nagda-drive sa ating economy. Pero marami yung mga pangangailangan nila na hindi pa natin naasikaso.
Robredo reveals her labor program has an initial price tag of 192 billion pesos that may come from the existing budget of agencies, including the Office of the President. Another presidential aspirant, Manny Pacquiao, said he will require a Filipino-first policy in securing employment. The senator said it is every Filipino's constitutional right to be first in employment in all industries. He said that his government will create a more favorable and welcoming situation for foreign investors. In the meantime, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno provided assistance to almost 200 families affected by a major fire in San Andres district. But others have gone ahead to help his constituents, including Pacquiao, who sent 400 grocery packs to the victims.
Hindi lang welcome. Thank you very much. Kung tutulungan nila yung mga kababayan ko sa Maynila. Kasi kailangan ng tulong ng mga tao na nasunugan. Kaya kung sino man ang tutulong, like in the case of President Duterte or Senator Bongo, hindi lang welcome na welcome. Maraming salamat sa pagtulong ninyo sa mga kababayan ko sa lungsod ng Maynila.
Panfilo Lacson and his running mate Tito Soto, meanwhile, are in vote-rich Cebu. Senator Lacson said he will welcome any endorsement but acknowledged that this is something he has to earn.
Sabi nga namin, not endorsements welcome, but we're not seeking it, especially openly, seeking just like one particular candidate is doing. We'll not do that, because we also deserve our own to make or to maintain our self-dignity intact, di ba? Meron din ang tao tayo, importante sa tao yung self-respect at saka yung dignidad ng isang tao.
Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte courted voters in Laguna, the 4th vote-rich province. They held caravans and met local leaders and groups. Marcos and Sara's father, President Duterte, carried the province in the 2016 national elections. Anjo Alimario, CNN Philippines.
Malacanang appeals to 2022 aspirants and their supporters to strictly follow health protocols during events. It also calls on local governments to step up efforts in enforcing measures like mask wearing and physical distancing. The palace asserts everyone should help in making sure low COVID-19 numbers are sustained.
You know the danger about saying na hindi, responsibility na yan, nagtuturuan na eh. And that's what we wanna avoid, no? It's shared responsibility. Kung supporter ka ng kandidato, dapat alam mo ng repercussions din sa kandidato mo, di ba? Yung candidate, ganun din. Kung mahal mo rin yung mga supporters mo, then you also have to be careful, no? LGUs, ganun din. Mandated yung responsibility by law.
Presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos and running mate Sara Duterte, as well as presidential hopeful Senator Manny Pacquiao, held caravans in Quezon City this week that drew large crowds and caused heavy traffic. Electricity prices are again set to rise this December, the 9th straight month of rate increases. Power distributor Meralco says the overall household rate for this month will go up by 31 centavos to 9 pesos and 77 centavos per kilowatt hour. This means households consuming 200 kilowatt hour a month should expect their bills to go up by around 63 pesos. Meralco attributed the increase to higher generation charges. The company adds this month's charge already includes the first of 4 installments covering the deferred costs from the November bill. The Energy Regulatory Commission had ordered Meralco to defer the collection of generation costs last month to cushion the impact of the Malampaya shutdown. Buying Christmas gifts online this 12/12 sale, our David Santos gives us some tips on how to find the lowest prices.
When shopping online, that add to cart option can actually help you keep track of the items you're planning to buy.
I always like to add things to cart well in advance, so I already have my shopping list there.
But don't check out immediately.
And then you'll see on 12/12 if they change price or not. You can see, oh, I can save this much money if I just wait till 12/12.
Keep in mind the universal advice. As much as possible, stick to your shopping list.
Because I know we've all been there where we've sort of just bought a ton of stuff and we're like, oh, I don't actually need any of this.
Also, make sure you can pay, just in case you'll be using your credit card.
We don't want people to accumulate debt just over excitement over products.
If you have time to spare, hop from one platform to the other.
Sometimes there are products in Lazada that are cheaper than in Shopee, but sometimes it's the other way around.
Experts note one emerging habit among Filipinos is to go to the malls to check products but go online to purchase it.
So that they can have it at their home at a cheaper price.
Be on the lookout for big bargains and also flash deals that go on live, which can sell out within minutes. Another tip, always look for additional discounts before checking out.
Free shipping here and there, 10 pesos off, 15 pesos off, they add up.
Earbuds and other gadgets, electronics, clothes, cosmetics, and even insulated tumblers are among the most in demand this year. But be careful not to fall prey to scams or dubious and faulty products. First, check the price.
It's too good to be true. It probably is.
Always read the item's reviews and rating. If the comment section is turned off, be wary. Experts say to know if you can trust a seller, check its transparency like its contact details and how responsive its customer service is.
That you know it's going to be a scam, like even though there's like professional photos, but all the comments are turned off. Right? There's no reviews at all.
Keep track of your order's shipping schedule. With more shoppers buying, shipping will be busier than ever. Experts recommend order early so you can take advantage of free shipping that arrives in time for Christmas.
Because if they don't know that you're rushing it, they will just include it in their bulk deliveries.
And if you've run out of options, there's always the gift card. Stores, groceries, and restaurants offer them for future spending. For some, it may be less personalized, but it's no doubt more practical. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
Coming up on Newsnight, Beatriz Luigi Gomez gives us updates after taking her first steps on the Miss Universe stage. And Olivia Rodrigo's mega successful year only gets better with a prestigious milestone from Time magazine. Details when we return.
Akala ko conquering the universe was the ultimate, but there's more. Dahil tinawag ko ako ng Panginoon for a major purpose. To guide the youth, help communities, and to bring others closer to Him. Kaya I take care of my health through proper diet, exercise, and MX3 capsule. I am ready to serve. Kasi para sa Panginoon, hindi lang ako fourth runner-up. First place ako sa puso niya.
Mahalagang paalala, ang MX3 capsule ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamitin panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
May pagbabago man sa dekorasyon, sa pangangaroling, at sa simoy ng selebrasyon. Ang maiiwan na damang-dama ay sarap ng
Rosedale San Antonio, a call center employee, backs her company's decision to still forgo holding a Christmas party this year.
Kayo personally, what do you feel about it?
Yeah, I do miss having fun with my friends, but we all want to protect ourselves and our families.
This despite government easing restrictions on in-person parties, which was banned last year due to the pandemic.
Kailangan lang pong sumunod doon sa IATF regulations, depende po sa alert level ng inyong lugar.
Over a dozen people recently contracted the Omicron variant of the coronavirus after attending a corporate gathering in Oslo, Norway. Local experts appeal to cancel again this year plans to hold face-to-face parties.
Best pa rin to hold virtual parties, no?
Until such time, most likely, baka talagang after December na siguro or January, let's see, no? Kung talagang mas mababa na yung kaso natin, then we will adjust the restrictions.
But COVID-19 cases continue to go down. More people are getting vaccinated and booster shots are now available. Some favor in-person parties to help struggling businesses like those on food and service sectors. Holding parties, some say, boosts workplace morale and serves as a relief after very difficult months. There are some tips, however, on how to hold safer company get-together. Instead, company-wide, why not hold parties by department? This way you can limit the number of people attending. Hold it outdoors, such as in parks, gardens, or any open-air space. You may also hold a hybrid party, meaning workers at risk may opt to join online, while those on site should be vaccinated and without any respiratory symptom. You may even require COVID-19 testing prior to the event. Singing, shouting, and serving alcohol are also discouraged.
Do not serve buffet dishes, no? So we can have plated dishes na lang po so that there won't be congregation.
Safety protocols like mask wearing, physical distancing, and hand sanitation should be strictly observed in the venue.
Kasi kung hindi ito susunod ang mga establishments na magiging host nitong mga Christmas parties na ito, ay pwede pong i-revoke ang safety pin nila o kaya naman isuspende ang kanilang business permit.
Keep in mind that there are more holiday gatherings, including those with their families and loved ones. So it is important to always stay safe. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
The first gringo boy who smiles at you.
I never seen you before. I'm a Puerto Rican.
Is that okay?
Do you want to start World War III?
The new West Side Story still has the gang clashes between the Sharks and Jets, the forbidden love at first sight between Tony and Maria, and those memorable songs.
Tonight.
The new generation of stars includes Rachel Zegler, a YouTube performer in her first professional role as Maria, Ansel Elgort as Tony, and Ariana DeBose as Anita, the role for which 60 years ago, Rita Moreno became the first Latina actress to win an Oscar.
You don't want to start maybe with "I'd like to take you out to coffee"?
Moreno returns in the new film's only new major role.
Welcome back. We're just days away from crowning the next Miss Universe. The preliminary competition kicks off at 1 a.m. tomorrow and the national costume event at 3:30 a.m. Then at 8 in the morning on Monday, the much-awaited coronation is set to begin. The country's Beatriz Luigi Gomez let netizens in on how it felt to step on the Miss Universe stage for the first time as they rehearsed for the pageant.
Hi everyone, I'm Beatriz from the Philippines. The first time I stepped on the stage, I felt goosebumps and I got so excited for the preliminaries and the finals night.
Fans can cast votes on the 2021 Miss Universe app until tomorrow to secure their contestant spot in the top 16. And Time has chosen an 18-year-old singer-songwriter as this year's top entertainer. And it's none other than Fil-Am musician Olivia Rodrigo. Her debut single, Driver's License, came out in January. That same month, she became the youngest solo artist to debut at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. 2022 is set to be another busy year for the singer. Olivia is up for 7 Grammys and is going on a US and Europe tour. We only have 15 days before Christmas. And that's it for tonight. I'm Ruth Cabal for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Sorsogon's governor wants to return to the Senate. Francis Chis Escudero wants to strengthen local government units, especially during this health crisis. Joining us now for an up-close conversation is Governor Chis. Chis, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, you have been governor of Sorsogon for 3 years now. Why not have another 3 years to continue the programs and initiatives that you already started in 2019?
First of all, Rico, to you and to all of our televiewers, a pleasant evening. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. I've only been in the provincial capital for less than 3 years, a little over 2 years, Rico. For one simple reason, whatever it is I do great in my province, it will never be enough to help uplift our entire province and our people without the country being uplifted as well. Sa laki ng problemang dinulot ng pandemyang ito sa ating bansa at sa ating ekonomiya, kailangan ng tulong ng bawat isa at nais kong i-alok yung tulong na yun. Ano mang nalalaman, karanasan, eksperyensya, galing o talino, meron man ako, nais kong ialay dahil ang aming lalawigan ng Sorsogon. Hindi aangat ng kami lang. Kailangan umangat ang buong bansa para umangat din kami. Yun ang aking paniniwala, kaya ako'y tumatakbo muli o inaalay muli o muling nilalagay ang pangalan ko sa balota para isa sa pagpilian ng ating mga kababayan na maging miyembro ng Senado.
And you were a member of the Senate, Chis, from 2007 to 2019. And if you win in May of 2022, you want to push for legislation to strengthen and empower local government units. How do you plan to do this, Chis?
There are many regulations, issuances, not really laws, which restrict the hands of local government units. For example, my budget in the province needs to be approved by the DBM. Any position I create needs to be approved by the DILG and the Civil Service Commission. Asan yung devolution? Nasaan yung kalayaan ng LGU magpasya para sa sarili niya at gastusin yung sarili niyang era? Now, if we're talking about funds emanating from the national government, like a subsidy, like an aid, then they can impose a menu. They can say where we can spend it on. However, if we're speaking of the internal revenue allotment or the locally generated revenues of LGUs, I think LGUs should be given a wider latitude, if not total freedom, to decide what to do with that money. Because by far, they know what their constituents need compared to what other officials in the national government are only limited to staying in their respective offices in Manila and not really knowing the true problems and situation in the various parts of our country. Add to that, Rico, that I've seen many best practices in so many LGUs that will by far outweigh and are by far more efficient and successful compared to what the national government is imposing on us, which we should follow. I think one of the solutions to this pandemic is to allow local government units to decide based on the idiosyncrasies of their respective local areas what needs to be done to address this pandemic right now.
And do you think LGUs should be able to procure their own vaccines?
Well, for those who can, our province cannot afford to do that, Rico, but there are many provinces who can afford to do it, and why not? In fact, I'm waiting for the time where you can buy a vaccine in a drugstore near your house. Right. Hopefully, that time will not be too far from coming. LGUs, private companies, it took a while before government was even able to allow private companies to buy using their own money and even ask that 50% be donated. Probably the private sector may have been more efficient in terms of procuring and even rolling out the vaccines that they themselves will be purchasing.
And Chis, you also want to solve the economic and public health problems of the country. How do you plan to fight this pandemic through legislation?
The most important piece of legislation Congress, any member of Congress, the House or the Senate should pass would be the Yearly General Appropriations Act. That is the most important law that they will pass, and that's an instrument by which government acts and makes other people react. It dictates whether our economy will indeed grind or grind slowly or grind to a halt. I have been fortunate to have been the finance chairman of the committee in the Senate, which handles the national budget. And indeed, it is a very important piece of legislation that can be used to either bring back the economy to where it was or make it slump even further, or on the other hand, help us overcome this health crisis or help us remain in the situation that we are in up to today after more than 1.5 years.
And of course, we all know, Cheese, millions of our kababayans are still out of jobs. The economy is weak and faces a long road towards a recovery. If you become senator once again, how will you try to jumpstart the economy and create jobs through legislation?
The national budget is the instrument that can create jobs, Rico. Number one, by way of expenditure, they can create jobs, however temporary it may be. But if government spends enough, it will stimulate the private sector to engage in spending as well, which will provide jobs as well. Number two, the government must be able to balance. It is a difficult balancing act, but they must be able to balance, on the one hand, the safety and health of our people, and on the other hand, the revival of our economy, meaning to say how to bring back jobs, how to reopen businesses that were closed, in order to pave the way for not only the new normal, but a normal life for everyone. Hopefully, Rico, so far the researches on a cure has been very positive, and by middle of next year, we hope that indeed their projections are correct, that a cure will be available. In which case, it will be like your other diseases, hypertension. Then you eat lechon, Rico, and then drink your pill. Diabetes, then eat your cake and ice cream, and then drink your pill. Same is true here. Instead of vaccinating 110 million Filipinos, we would only be providing medicine to those who would get sick, which is about 2% of our population.
But of course, Cheese, we also have to make sure that the budget that is appropriated to the various government agencies has to be used properly, no? No graft and corruption. Everyone has to be held accountable, and there has to be transparency.
Let's start, Rico, with use. Let's start with use. There are many agencies whose absorptive capacity is very low. Congress allocated them a huge amount of money, but they were not able to spend it, or they did not spend it, either for one or another bureaucratic reason or red tape reason. Number two would be, as you said, it should be spent properly. That's why, Rico, I am totally against the reason being used by government, citing NDA or a non-disclosure agreement, as a reason not to disclose at how much did we buy the vaccines that we procured. Because to my knowledge, Rico, government borrowed over 300 billion to procure vaccines. And the price of vaccines are in the website. The prices of vaccines are in the website of the WHO. In other countries, they publish it in newspapers and come out as news articles. But here in our country, and I believe in about 3 other countries, they're using the NDA as an excuse not to be transparent with respect to how government money, public money was spent, specifically in buying the vaccines.
And Cheese, let's talk about this provision of substitution in the Omnibus Election Code. And some critics are saying candidate substitution by political parties has been abused. What should be done by Congress in 2022?
Historically, Rico, that was not a problem before, because the last day of filing has always been followed by the first day of campaigning the day after. But since we automated our elections, filing had to be made earlier so that COMELEC can still print the ballots and put the names of all the candidates in the ballot. It opened up the floodgates for a period of substitution. 2 things can be done, Rico. One, do not allow voluntary substitution after the last day of filing. In other words, there can be substitution, but it should be involuntary, meaning if the candidate becomes incapacitated or decides to withdraw or is killed or dies. But voluntary substitution and voluntary withdrawal may be prohibited or excluded from the law to avoid situations where we see that the last day of filing is being there's a mockery with respect to the period for filing certificates of candidacy. They simply file without even being serious in filing, simply to fill in the gap or warm the chair for someone else. In a way, it's a circumvention of the provisions of the law providing for a period for filing of certificates of candidacy.
And Chase, a lot of issues to talk about, but let's jump to you running for senator, and you're a guest candidate on the rosters of several presidential aspirants, VP Leni Robredo, Senator Ping Lacson, Manny Pacquiao, to name a few. Does it help your cause to be a guest candidate of many lineups instead of just one party? one group?
Rico, sino mang kandidato na kulang ang makinarya, kulang ang pera na maglunsad ng kampanya sa buong bansa, malaking bagay na maisali ka, maampon ka, ma-adapt ka, at may mag-alok ng tulong sa'yo. Kahit sino siguro tumatakbo na may nag-alok ng tulong, hindi naman tatanggihan yun ng sino mang kumakandidato. Basta't walang hinihiling na kapalit, na prinsipyo o paniniwala mo. But Rico, on the other hand, I also see it as a positive step. A positive step because if presidential candidates who are competing right now can agree and can find common ground with 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 candidates or several local candidates, then probably there's also a possibility that after the elections, whoever wins, they can also find common ground and come to agreement with respect to fighting for the interests of over 110 million Filipinos.
I have to ask you this question, Cheese, no, because your late father was a part of the Marcos administration. If Bongbong Marcos asks you to be a guest candidate in his senatorial slate, will you agree?
First of all, Rico, like I said, sino man mag-aalok ng tulong na walang hinihiling na kapalit, walang rason para sino man tumanggi. But if the premise is, I will automatically agree because my father served as minister of former President Marcos, I hope to remind our televiewers too that I also ran against Bongbong in the 2016 elections for vice president. So that would have nothing to do with it. The only reason, if at all, would be the fact that I am a nobody to refuse or say no to someone offering help and who is not asking for anything in return.
All right, we will continue our up-close conversation with Governor Cheese Escudero after this short break. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust. Welcome back to the Final Word on CNN Philippines. I'm Rico Hizon. Let's continue our discussion with Sorsogon Governor Cheese Escudero. Cheese, we have 6 questions for you, but you only have to answer them with a yes or a no, and no explanation is needed. Okay? I'm putting you on the spot. Here's the first question. Do you favor easier public access to the statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth of the President, Vice President, and the members of Congress?
Yes.
Do you support lifting foreign ownership limits in the Constitution?
No.
Do you favor the reimposition of the death penalty for drug-related crimes?
No.
Should a sitting president be allowed to run for vice president in the next election?
Yes.
Cheese?
I can't
Yes?
explain now, but yes,
No, you
because
can't
it's not
explain. So it's a
prohibited
yes.
right now.
Okay. Do you favor? You thought about that for a number of seconds there. Do you favor resuming peace talks with the communist rebels?
Yes.
And should the country be more aggressive in protecting its maritime interests in the West Philippine Sea?
Definitely. Yes.
And finally, Cheese, before we end our up-close conversation, a final message for our kababayans who are thinking right now if they should vote for you or not vote for you and return you to the Senate in the May 2022 elections.
So I can't use this to explain my yes and no answers?
No. Final message.
Sa bigat at laki ng problema ng ating bansa, bawat isa sa atin, anuman ang kakayahan, anuman ang talento, anuman ang karanasan, anuman ang galing, dapat ialay yon para sa bayan, bilang public official man o bilang pribadong mamamayan. Sa parte ko, naging buhay ko na sa matagal na panahon ng pagiging public servant. At ito ang nalalaman kong gawin at pwede kong maiambag sa ating bansa. Kaya muli ko nilagay ang pangalan ko sa balota para isa sa pagpilian ng ating mga kababayan na maging miyembro muli ng Senado para maiambag, maitulong, maialok kung anumang nalalaman ko at pwede kong gawin, hindi lamang para sa aming lalawigan bilang gobernador ngayon, pero para sa buong bansa at sa ating mga kababayan.
Sorsogon Governor Cheese Escudero, Thank you so much for joining us on The Final Word.
Maraming salamat, Rico. Thank you. Good evening.